Welcome back to Chapter by Chapter Classics, the short-form classic literature podcast, where each episode walks you through a few chapters of a great book. This season, we're reading Frankenstein side by side in the 1818 original and the 1831 revised edition, so you'll hear notes for both. Previously in Frankenstein, Victor tried to escape his guilt in the mountains, only to meet the creature face to face and hear the beginning of a new story told in the creature's own voice. Today, we're in chapters 13 through 16, following the creature as he learns language and history from the Cottage family and eventually dares to reveal himself to them. The core events are the same in both texts, but the 1831 edition sometimes makes the creature's anger feel a bit sharper and more vengeful than the 1818 version, which often keeps his sensitivity in the foreground. We'll point out those tonal shifts where they matter most.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are strapping in for what I think is the absolute core tragedy of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Oh, absolutely. We're getting into the creature's own narrative.
Chapters 13 through 16. This is his story, in his words.
And this is such an essential part of the book because, for this brief critical moment, Victor Frankenstein just vanishes.
He does.
We are fully immersed in the consciousness of the being he created and abandoned.
We stop seeing him as a monster from the outside and start to understand this complex, self-taught mind.
Exactly. These 4 chapters are the creature's defense, really. It's his evidence for how he went from, a being yearning for connection to the vengeful fiend we know he becomes.
Okay, so let's unpack that. We're going to track his astonishingly fast self-education, his devastating rejection, and then that immediate, furious turn toward violence.
And we'll keep an eye on those subtle differences between the 1818 and 1831 editions. They really do flavor his descent.
So our deep dive begins in what is basically an invisible classroom.
Right. He's in this miserable little hovel tacked onto the side of a cottage.
And through a crack in the wall, he watches the DeLacy family. The blind father DeLacy and his children, Felix and Agatha.
And he is no teacher, nothing. Yet he starts acquiring language and, morality at this incredible rate.
His learning process is just a marvel of pure observation.
It really is. He's not just hearing sounds. He's picking up context, emotion, everything. He learns French by listening to them.
And that whole process gets a huge boost when Safi the Arabian arrives.
Yes, because Felix starts teaching her French systematically. So the creature is essentially eavesdropping on a daily masterclass in language.
And it's not just language, is it? He's learning what it means to be human. He calls it the amiableness of domestic affection.
He feels their emotions. He feels joy when they're happy, depression when they're sad. He's showing this profound inherent capacity for empathy just by watching them.
He sees the ideal family, the ideal life.
But that ideal gets complicated almost immediately. Because through their conversations, he learns their history. And this becomes his first lesson in sociology and political injustice.
Right, the devastating story of the DeLacy family.
Yeah. He hears that they were once wealthy, respected citizens in France.
And they lost everything because Felix did something.
Mm.
Good. He helped a persecuted Turkish merchant escape from prison.
Safi's father. And for this act of pure virtue, the state took its revenge.
They threw his blind father and his sister into a noisome dungeon.
Stripped them of their wealth, their rank, everything.
So imagine being the creature. You're just learning about the world, and this is what you get.
Exactly. The first thing you learn is the stark contrast between rank and magnificence and poverty and oblivion.
And that human justice relies on sanguinary laws, bloody, merciless rules.
So he now understands this fundamental paradox. Doing good can lead to your complete and utter ruin. He hasn't even spoken to a person, and he already knows society is corrupt.
So if the DeLacy's gave him his sociology lesson, the next phase is his education in philosophy. And this is what really pushes him into crisis.
Yeah, we're talking about the books. He finds a satchel with 3 books in it.
Paradise Lost, Plutarch's Lives, and Goethe's The Sorrows of Werther.
And this is where the deep dive really matters. Because these aren't just random books. They form his entire unmentored education in what it means to exist.
He has zero context for them.
None. And he applies every single one of them directly to himself.
Let's start with the big one, Paradise Lost. That's the one that really frames his identity. Right?
Absolutely. It teaches him about creation, about good versus evil, about the bond between a creator and, his creation.
He sees himself in Adam.
At first, but he quickly realizes the comparison doesn't work. Adam had a creator who spoke to him, who cared for him.
And he had Eve.
He had a companion. The creature has no one, so he lands on this perfect tragic metaphor for himself.
I am rather the fallen angel whom thou drivest from joy for no misdeed.
It's just crushing. He sees himself not as Adam, but as Satan.
But the other books fuel that feeling too, like The Sorrows of Werther.
Right. Werther is all about intense romantic melancholy. It gives him the language for his own despair, his yearning for a companion he knows he'll never have. It teaches him to feel his solitude on this grand, tragic scale.
And then you have Plutarch's Lives, which seems like the odd one out. It's all about heroes and civic duty.
But that's the point. It sets up this impossible standard. He reads about these great and virtuous men and realizes he has no name, no history, no place in society.
He's disqualified from being human before he even tries.
Precisely. So you put it all together. The social injustice from the de Lacys, the existential abandonment from Milton, the emotional despair from Goethe, and the impossible ideals from Plutarch.
All this knowledge just leads him to the horror of self-recognition. He looks at his reflection and sees this hideous figure.
Exactly. His self-loathing isn't just about being ugly. It's about knowing his appearance makes him a pariah in every single system he's just learned about. He asks, who was I? What was I?
And the answer his education gives him is, you are the fallen angel, alone and deserving of nothing.
And that profound isolation, it just pushes him to do something incredibly risky.
He decides he has to try. He has to make contact.
After months of just watching, he forms a plan. He chooses a moment when only the old blind father is home.
Which is just the height of dramatic irony.
It's his final test, really. He knows appearance is his curse, so he goes to the one person who can't see him.
And he's so eloquent. He uses all the language he's learned. He approaches de Lacy as a stranger, seeking protection.
And it works. The conversation is so tender. De Lacy is completely persuaded by his words, by his sincerity. He offers help, empathy.
He says it gives him true pleasure to be serviceable to a human creature.
For one brief, perfect moment, the creature belongs. He experiences that idealized humanity he's only read about.
But it's so short-lived.
Brutally short. Felix, Agatha, and Safie come back early.
And Felix just sees this grotesque figure at his father's feet.
And he reacts instantly, with horror, with violence. He tears the creature away from his father.
Agatha faints, Safie flees. It's chaos.
And that's it. The absolute, immediate physical rejection confirms all his worst fears.
All that learning, all that preparation, just annihilated in a single glance.
That's the moment his benevolence dissolves. He tried to be Adam. Humanity forced him to be the fallen angel.
And the fallout is catastrophic.
That's the word for it. He flees, hides, and when he comes back to the cottage later, it's dark.
Deserted. They left because of him.
And that's what sends him into what he calls a kind of insanity. His mildness is gone. It's all gall and bitterness now.
He makes a conscious choice for destruction.
A very conscious choice. He gathers wood, straw, anything that will burn, and he sets the cottage on fire.
It's a last one.
He erases it, dancing with fury as the flames destroy everything. It's the physical manifestation of his emotional trauma.
And from that moment, his path is set. He's heading for Geneva.
Seeking Victor Frankenstein, he is driven now only by the spirit of revenge.
Which leads him to his first murder, William Frankenstein.
Yes. And even then, you see this tiny flicker of his old self. He sees the young boy and thinks, for a second, maybe he could raise the child to be an unprejudiced companion.
But then he sees the miniature portrait.
The portrait of Elizabeth. And the rage comes back because he's reminded of everything he can never have, and he strangles the boy.
But his malice, it doesn't stop there. He gets clever.
He gets calculating. This is where he applies that lesson about sanguinary laws. He finds Justine sleeping in a barn.
And he frames her. He puts the miniature in her pocket.
This isn't blind rage anymore. This is conscious villainy. He is now using the cruel mechanisms of human injustice to serve his own revenge.
And it's interesting, when you look at the 1831 revision of the text.
Right. Shelley really leans into that.
She deepens his malignant pleasure in that moment.
Exactly. The 1818 text gives you a bit more of a sense that his rage is mixed with regret. But the 1831 version, it makes that shift to calculated cruelty feel much more absolute, much more immediate. The core events are the same, but the later edition really doubles down on his bitterness. It affects how much sympathy you have for him.
So we've tracked the entire descent from this isolated, self-taught philosopher.
To a being in total despair after that absolute social rejection.
And finally, to a conscious, calculating agent of malice and revenge.
He's become the destroyer Victor feared, and he's doing it by using the very tools of injustice he learned from observing mankind.
It's the central tragedy of the novel, really.
It is. Misery and solitude turned a being who was, by his own account, benevolent and good into a fiend. He now sees his pursuit of Victor not as a choice, but as a task assigned by a cruel destiny.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to carry away. The creature's entire path of violence hinges on a series of rejections driven purely by his physical appearance. So, if his entire education and cruelty came from observing an unjust world, a world that couldn't see past his face, how much responsibility does Victor truly bear for the monster he became? Especially since he's the one who abandoned him to that education in the first place.
So, we learned that in both the 1818 and 1831 Frankenstein, the Cottage chapters show us a creature who is educated, thoughtful, and desperate for connection. But they also mark the moment when rejection hardens into rage. The two editions largely agree on what happens, yet some 1831 passages tip the balance more toward bitterness. Next time, in chapters 17 through 20, we'll look at the creature's demand for a mate, Victor's attempt at a second creation, and the choices that deepen the cycle of revenge. Thanks for listening to Chapter by Chapter Classics. If this episode helped you follow the story, follow the show in your podcast app so you don't miss the next chapter. And if you're enjoying this series, please take a moment to rate the podcast or leave a short review. It really helps other readers and students find the show.